Chapter 36. Obstacles. Degree and Sponsorship, 1990. As I fought my nightly battles with the TOEFL, another concern weighed heavily on my mind: my lack of an academic degree. What if I passed the English requirement but lacked the formal qualifications for graduate school? This worry haunted my dreams. One day I wondered, could my self-taught bachelor's degree from East China Normal University, ECNU, serve as a substitute for a traditional 4-year degree? It wasn't a standard diploma. I obtained it between 1982 and 1986 through China's self-study higher education exams, a non-traditional academic pathway, akin to a barefoot doctor version of a university degree. However, one detail gave me hope. The president of ECNU officially signed it. Would an American university recognize this unconventional credential? I pursued this self-study literature degree not for career advancement, but out of a lifelong passion for books. It served as an intellectual sanctuary amidst the pressures of everyday life. For 4 years, I balanced my studies at East China Normal University with the ongoing demands of a full-time government job. My evenings were dedicated to textbooks, their pages glowing softly under the light of my desk lamp as I absorbed every word with focused determination. Sundays, my sole break from a grueling 6-day work schedule, were not for resting. Instead, I used them to take exams, evaluating the knowledge I had diligently gained during the fleeting hours between work and sleep. Every spare moment and ounce of energy went into this solitary quest for knowledge. It was exhausting and relentless, yet profoundly rewarding. During that period, this was the sole self-directed bachelor's degree offered in China, a unique and challenging route for individuals seeking higher education beyond the conventional university framework. Tens of thousands enrolled with fervor, driven by ambition and the dream of earning a degree against formidable odds. Yet, the grueling pace, rigorous exams, and unwavering discipline demanded proved daunting for most. By the first graduation in 1987, the first class of only 22 students had completed the program. I was one of them. In a poetic twist of history, an extraordinary anomaly unfolded. During the Cultural Revolution, I immersed myself in devouring every banned book I could uncover. These so-called poisonous weeds became the cornerstone of my dreams for a future beyond the turmoil. What a world of contradictions we lived in. Seeking to test my luck, I called Fort Hays State University in Kansas. Though my voice remained calm, my heart raced as I asked a pivotal question. Could my self-study degree from China be accepted for a master's program? The reply was measured yet receptive. They requested that I send the original certificate for evaluation, promising a detailed review and a decision after careful deliberation. Then came the wait. Weeks later, I reached out again, preparing myself for the news. The voice on the line shared the details words that completely surprised me. They accepted my degree and considered it more valuable than a typical undergraduate diploma from a conventional university in China. I was left speechless. Could it be that an American university grasped the nuances of Chinese education better than many of my fellow citizens? It was an eye-opener that left me thoroughly impressed, not only by their fairness, but also by their professionalism, diligence, and efficiency. The advisor who assisted with my inquiry was Joe Potts, who specialized in helping international students. At first, he was just a voice on the phone and a name on my application. However, he soon became much more, one of my most trusted allies during my journey to America, and, eventually, a dear friend to both me and Qiuling. Initially, I viewed this degree as merely an academic experiment, a way to test my literary skills, with no lofty ambitions or clear practical applications in mind. I felt secure in my future in the government. There was no pressing need for a degree to guarantee my job, and I hadn't sought one with specific career goals. I obtained it merely to satisfy my intellectual curiosity as a backup for an uncertain future, even though I had no clear idea of what that future might hold. Yet, unexpectedly, this very degree, which I considered nothing more than a symbolic milestone, turned into my ticket to study in the United States. It felt like a miracle. I was being guided. I wouldn't understand the significance of this moment until years later, after I came to faith, realizing that the path had been set for me long before I ever walked it. Adhering to my plan, I took my first official TOEFL exam 6 months later, in January 1990. The outcome? 547. I fell short of the required score by only 3 points. Just 3 points. It was so agonizingly close, yet still not enough. But I wasn't finished. In May, I took a second attempt, and this time I scored 557. I had exceeded the necessary threshold. With that accomplishment, the winds began to change. Acceptance letters from American universities started arriving in my mailbox, one after another. Finally, I chose Fort Hays State University in Kansas. This decision was based on the following criteria. And the Midwest offered the lowest tuition, making it the most affordable choice. And the visa process was reportedly easier compared to larger cities. But most importantly, I had already established a direct relationship with Joe Potts, the international student advisor who advocated for my acceptance. Those who had been through the process cautioned me. If it's your first time applying for a student visa, opt for a smaller school in the Midwest. Steer clear of major cities like New York or Los Angeles. The rejection rates are significantly higher. It was logical. A visa denial could ruin everything I worked for, so I required the best odds. Despite grappling with formidable political, financial, and academic obstacles, I pressed forward, defying all expectations. A journey that once appeared completely unattainable was now within reach. It was now more than just a far-off dream. Where was the sponsorship? Finally, the real battle surfaced, the one I had dreaded from the beginning, the one that left me desperately searching for solutions, standing tall between me and my seemingly unattainable dream of studying abroad. I lacked a financial guarantor. Despite the grueling nature of the TOEFL, it was a challenge I could face with determination, a test I could overcome through relentless studying and discipline. However, securing a financial guarantee was beyond my reach. No matter how hard I tried, the harsh truth remained. I didn't have anyone to support me, no one to sign the necessary documents to reassure U.S. authorities I wouldn't be a burden as soon as I arrived. For any Chinese student at that time, the requirement for a financial guarantor felt like a devastating obstacle, a barrier that had dashed the hopes of many before me. During those years, China remained a country marked by poverty. Regardless of their background, everyone was part of the proletariat, and no matter their ambitions, they faced fundamental financial struggles. Even in Shanghai, China's richest and most developed city, proper financial security was a mere illusion. Despite holding one of the best government jobs and having a high rank within the municipal system, I was impoverished. Without a financial sponsor, I had to abandon the original plans for fall 1990 enrollment. I felt like watching a train I had desperately tried to catch leave the station without me. Another admission letter came in October for the January 1991 semester. A second opportunity. But my situation hadn't improved. I still lacked a financial guarantee. Time moved on. Days turned into weeks and hope faded. I had exhausted all my options and reached a total standstill. It felt as though I was standing on the brink of a cliff. As November approached, time was becoming critical. If I didn't secure a solution soon, the second train would depart without me, and I would miss my chance. Desperation often drives people to take risks. With no other options available, I decided to take a significant leap. I contacted an old classmate employed at a prominent securities firm in Tokyo. I shared my situation and asked if he could visit the U.S. Embassy in Japan to obtain a financial guarantee for my study. A week later, I received it. I was deeply grateful for my schoolmate's efforts to help, but doubts gnawed at me. Would the U.S. government recognize it, or was this just another futile gesture? I had no answers to my doubts. In those final high-pressure days, something odd occurred. Desperation inspired a strange and illogical idea that I couldn't ignore. Why couldn't I fund myself? This notion consumed me like an obsession, as if I had discovered a secret passage in a labyrinth, a hidden door no one had considered opening. For days I held on to this thought as if I were mad. Looking back, I was probably perilously close to delusion. How can I secure funding for school without funds? It felt utterly irrational, but I had reached the point where logic no longer mattered. Regardless of how foolish or unrealistic my thinking or my plan was, it was my only option. Thus, I made another urgent phone call. I contacted Joe Potts, the international student advisor at Fort Hays State University in Kansas. If I transfer the money directly to the university, I inquired, can the school provide me with a financial guarantee letter? Joe paused. After a moment, he answered,
The university cannot serve as your financial guarantor. However, if you wire $10,000 sufficient to cover your first year's tuition and living expenses, we can issue a confirmation letter indicating that you possess adequate financial resources for your studies.
$10,000. The amount was astronomical. At that instant, it felt as though it were more than $1 million. Yet this was my sole opportunity. It wasn't an official bank statement, nor a financial affidavit backed by an embassy. It certainly wasn't what the U.S. consulate typically required. But it was something, at least. Would it be accepted? Would it lead to my visa? Only heaven knew. I stopped worrying about the uncertainties. At this point, my entire journey had become a blind march across an uncharted river. I felt my way across the stones, hoping I wouldn't slip and drown before reaching the other side. Now that the university had agreed to issue a financial confirmation letter, the next step was painfully clear. I needed the money first. And not just money in theory, not just promises, pledges, or well-meaning support. I needed cash, cold, hard cash. Where in the world was I supposed to get it? $10,000, and I needed it fast. By November 1990, only 2 months before the winter semester at Fort Hays State University, I found myself without a financial guarantor and lacking the funds to travel to America. Without a sponsor, securing a U.S. student visa was impossible. It remained out of reach without money, tuition payment, or the chance to enter the U.S. I had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges before, but this situation felt like a mountain I had no idea how to conquer. During that time in mainland China, it was nearly impossible for an average person to possess $10,000 in cash. The wealthiest individuals were known as 10,000 yuan households, those who risked engaging in illegal or daring businesses to accumulate 10,000 RMB, which was regarded as a significant sum, even making national headlines. Yet that was merely 10,000 RMB. What I required was $10,000 USD, according to the official exchange rate at the time. $10,000 USD amounted to 80,000 RMB. However, if one sought to exchange that amount on the black market, at least 100,000 RMB would be necessary. 100,000 RMB was so astronomical that it might as well have been written in the sky. For the average Chinese person in the late 1980s, this amount was not just out of reach. It was beyond imagination. It represented a lifetime's earnings in Shanghai and Beijing, even in the richest areas and among top government and state-owned enterprise officials. This brought to mind two colleagues, both managers at the Jinjiang Hotel, who faced a downfall because of financial misconduct. They had misappropriated under 100,000 RMB from a construction project. One received a 10-year prison sentence. This was the same person who had brought crab meat for my mother during her final days in the hospital. The other received a life sentence. That was the brutal reality of China in the late 1980s. Even coming into that sort of money, whether through corruption or private transactions, was dangerous. Yet here I was in desperate need of that exact amount to buy myself a chance at a new future. The irony was striking. During that period, the typical monthly salary in Shanghai ranged from 50 to 80 RMB. My salary, which was deemed fairly high on a national scale, was merely 110 RMB each month. Even then, the mayor of Shanghai, Jiang Zemin, earned only 150 RMB monthly. Let's put this into perspective. In the 1980s, when $10,000 USD equaled roughly 100,000 RMB, that sum was equivalent to 6 to 10 million RMB in today's economic terms, adjusting for inflation and purchasing power. Back then, no one in China could legally amass such wealth. Even today, while some may possess that level of affluence, borrowing such a vast amount for personal use remains a formidable challenge. In a country where poverty was widespread, where 10,000 RMB marked you as exceptionally wealthy, and where acquiring 100,000 RMB could lead to a life sentence, I was daring to borrow that sum not for business or survival, but to chase a dream of studying in America. It was akin to asking a barren, thorny wasteland to bloom into golden fields of rice overnight. It was madness, a fool's errand, a fantasy straight out of Arabian Nights. Although my mission was utterly absurd, I refused to accept defeat. I crafted an unattainable dream, a notion so far removed from reality that it should have crumbled under its own weight. Yet in my mind it felt possible. So I took the typical route of a desperate dreamer. I began my research. I reached out to the only two patrons, my closest friends from childhood, one from elementary school and the other from high school. They were the only two individuals I knew who could potentially assist me, and, importantly, they had no ties to my government position. One had an uncle in Hong Kong who regularly visited the mainland for business, and I facilitated his connections with key contacts in China. The other was Tang Liming, my best friend from elementary school, the friend who once filled my childhood with books, nurturing my endless curiosity for knowledge. Now, years later, he worked at the Bureau of Industry and Commerce in Shanghai, a role that puts him in close contact with businessmen, traders, and entrepreneurs. If anyone was connected to wealthy individuals, it was he. Could he offer the assistance I required? Would our childhood friendship, forged through borrowed books, somehow facilitate the biggest gamble of my life? Gathering every bit of courage I had, I addressed them directly. Can you help me secure $10,000 for my studies abroad? As soon as I spoke, my heart raced. It felt as though I were asking them to commit a crime. Asking for such a massive sum of money, a figure so large it almost seemed imaginary, was akin to requesting they rob a bank. Yet, to my complete astonishment, both agreed.
"We'll see what we can do,"
they replied. Were they actually going to try? I was stunned. Oh my God, they're not actually going to rob a bank, are they? Now all I could do was wait. It had been over a year and a half since that transformative morning in Director Hu's office, when he first said, "Go abroad," forever changing my path. Since that day, I have been relentlessly pursuing that singular goal. Every challenge, every success, and every political change had only solidified one overarching truth. I must leave China. But would I be truly driven to the point of robbing a bank?